Okay, great. So, before we begin everything, I wanted to introduce Jake Powell. He's an extension specialist and an assistant professor at Utah State University in the Landscape Architecture and Environmental Planning Department. And he's going to talk briefly about the Utah Trails Forum and the first annual conference. So, Jake, if I can go ahead and kick it to you.
Thanks, Patrick. As Patrick said, I'm an extension specialist here at Utah State, and I've been leading the Utah Trail Forum Education and Outreach Subcommittee for the last little while. And we really hope this webinar provides some valuable insights into what it takes to be a trail town. So on behalf of the Utah Trails Forum, I want to thank Tara and Patrick for taking the leadership role in putting this webinar together. We could not do it without them. So like all of you, I'm really excited to learn from Amy today. I believe there's so many different ways we can learn from the experiences of others within our state and also across the nation. So that's really what the Utah Trails Forum is all about. It's about bringing people together to learn from our shared experiences. Just to give you a quick introduction about the Utah Trails Forum, it's a newly formed group that's really intent on bringing anyone in Utah's Trails community together to collectively, as it says, build Utah's path to the greatest trails on earth. So our group is focused on advancing trail access, quality, and stewardship through collaboration, education, and technical support. So we're really about creating a space for anyone who's interested in trails to ask questions, share their ideas, and also get resources. And this webinar is a great example of just such a space. So another space that's coming up, as Patrick mentioned, is our first Utah Trails Forum annual conference. And this is an opportunity to meet in person with other folks in the trails community here in Utah, learn together through a series of workshops, and help guide and get involved in the work of the Utah Trails Forum for the next couple of years. So as this slide just demonstrates, Wednesday is an opportunity to come together and be involved in some workshops, both for you to learn and for you to teach us as a larger trails community. And then Thursday is the Utah Outdoor Recreation Summit, and that's something we really are excited to be the bookends of and be able to participate in. And then Friday, there's a series of courses that are rolled into the Utah Trail Master Steward course, which is something I'm working on. And we'll be working on 3 different tracks that you can choose. They're 3 or 4 hour classes that are on trail assessments, trail maintenance, and trail planning and design. And you'll be able to select one of those tracks. So I want to extend my invitation to come join us in Logan and also in Kanab and take advantage of this great opportunity. Thanks, Patrick.
All right, thank you so much, Jake. And with that, I want to pass it over to Tara, who's going to be introducing our guest.
Hi, I'm really excited to introduce Amy Camp that I had the pleasure of meeting at the National Outdoor Recreation Conference. I believe it was for the first time in Vermont. So Amy Camp had founded Cycle Forward in 2013, and it was with the plan to help communities to better connect to and benefit from trails. She's a trails and tourism consultant, a placemaker, and a certified coach. She's helped to launch the nationally recognized Trail Town program in 2007. She's since offered her consulting services throughout Appalachia, the Rust Belt, other locations throughout the US and Canada. Her book, Deciding on Trails, which I've got right here, it details the history of Trails Town as well as her recommended best practices. And just note, for those of you who didn't hear, we will be giving away 4 copies of these. You'll just want to put your questions into the chat, and we'll be able to draw your names at random. She serves on the board of American Trails, or she did serve from 2012 to 2017. And she currently serves on the board of the Continental Divide Trail Coalition. She's an associate certified coach through the International Coach Federation, and she firmly believes that her coaching certification makes her a better consultant. She lives in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, where she first grew to love communities and began her work to improve them. So we will take it away, Amy.
Okay, thank you, Tara, so much, and thank you to you and Patrick both for having me here. Just give me a quick thumbs up if you would to let me know if the sound is okay before I open up my PowerPoint. Okay, very good. So give me just a moment to do that. Okay. You should be seeing my screen. Let me know if not. Okay, so everyone, thank you so much. I am glad to be here with you, talking about what it means to be a trail town. We're going to spend about the next hour looking at the history of the trail town model for community development, as well as how it's been adapted throughout the US and now Canada. And then I'm going to share with you some best practices for trail communities and trail businesses before we get into discussion. But where I wanted to start today was with ice cream and beer. A friend of mine with the National Park Service says that all trails lead to beer and ice cream, usually one or the other, but sometimes both. But the reason I included this slide is because I wanted to ask you to consider what happens whenever you are in a trail community, like I was about probably 10 years ago, and you walk into a bar after you're out on the trail, and you sit down, and there are only two other people in the establishment. There's the other customer and the bartender. And I placed my order and I got my beer, and the bartender then went and sat on the beer cooler behind the bar with her back turned to me. And that's how she continued to sit for about the next hour. So in a trail community in which, you know, a lot of the businesses depend upon, trail users coming in, this bartender literally had her back turned to me that day, and it left an impression. What we don't want to do in our communities is to turn our backs on trails. A lot of times communities do and have, but there are plenty of things that we can do to instead turn and be trail facing and trail serving, and have, you know, a really wonderful relationship between trail and town. What we want instead of that turned back moment is something that I talk about in my book. It's another time on the same trail. And I was down by the trail, and this older gentleman walks down to me, and, you know, he's kind of like he's a little bit rushed, and I think he's going to give me an earful. And whenever he gets to me, he says, "Are you with the trail?" And I say, "Yes." And he says, "This trail is the best thing that's ever happened to this town." We want more of those moments. We want towns that have ice cream flavors that are named after their nearest trail. We want visitor and resident exchanges, like whenever you are at a trailhead and you ask a local resident, "Well, how do I get into town from here?" And they said, "Here, let me show you." And they, you know, pedal their bike and they have you follow them. So there are lots of ways that we can be more accommodating to trail users and do a better job of inviting local residents to enjoy our trails. And so this all gets to the fact that I'm going to be spending some time today talking about culture. I know that probably if you're on this call, you are, you know, quite interested in the trail economy and the outdoor economy. And one of my strongest beliefs is that if we have an underlying culture in our communities that embraces and celebrates trails and outdoor recreation, that will help to uphold that economy over time. So let's start at the beginning of trail towns. The first trail town program was established in 2007 along a rail trail called the Great Allegheny Passage. It was a progress project of the Progress Fund, which was my former employer, in conjunction with the Great Allegheny Passage Conservancy. So these are two nonprofits working together to launch a program to help local communities better benefit from the trail. The Great Allegheny Passage was a 150-mile rail trail that connects Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania to Cumberland, Maryland. And in Cumberland, it connects to another trail, the C&O Canal Towpath, that goes all the way to DC. So what you have is a 335-mile off-road corridor that was becoming, you know, pretty popular at the time. But you had a lot of rural communities in the middle that weren't benefiting in the way that was thought to be possible. So the Conservancy, comes up with this idea to create a trail town program. it was inspired by Main Street. I know you have a Main Street program in Utah. The idea was to help the downtowns of these mostly rural communities to better to improve and to better benefit from the economic opportunity that was before them, which was trail tourism. And before I, talk any more about that program, I just wanted to step further back to the middle of the last century. What made all of this possible were two things. One was the abandonment of rail lines, and the second was the rise of the shopping mall. Two things that are seemingly totally unrelated, but from the 1960s into the 1970s and 80s, there was a lot of change happening in small town America, and in response to the rise of the shopping mall, there's a program created called the National Main Street Center. So this Main Street program to help revitalize traditional downtown areas is something that went on to inspire our founders in terms of helping towns along this trail. So and then the other thing that happened is the Rails to Trails Conservancy was formed in 1986. By 1989, there were 200 known rail trails, and now there are more than 2,000. So really, these things that were happening in small town America were setting the stage for the creation of the Trail Town program. So you had the availability of rail corridors and this successful model in Main Street, and the folks that created the Trail Town program said, yeah, let's try to do something like that for trails. This would be a great time for me to stop and tell you a lot of my work is along rail trails. You're going to see lots of bikes as examples, but these ideas are transferable to all trail types, and in fact have been transferred to all trail types. So as for the program along the Great Allegheny Passage, which I may also call the Gap for short, what our program was a regional program helping communities to tap into a shared resource, which was the trail. Some of the things that we did during that program where we did community assessments really early on. In every participating town, we went in and we assessed the community alongside local residents and looked at what was working, what's not working so well, what are some opportunities for improvement. We also did economic research and trail use research, trying to understand what the economic benefit and impact of the trail was at that time, as well as how many people were using it. Something that was also an important part of the program was business assistance. We had just the two-person staff running the program across a 150-mile corridor, but we were able to help businesses who were interested in having help in terms of understanding the trail market and how to do a better job of marketing their business and reaching that market. And we also had access to capital. Our organization was able to make loans for business startups and expansions. And then a couple of other things, brand development and marketing were a big part of what we were doing. We had these towns that had no reason to really connect with each other, now had a reason to, and they became a part of a larger brand and were marketed together as part of the trail experience. And then the last thing was infrastructure. We did a lot of physical improvements. Bike racks, signage, public art are a few examples. We thought at the time of the program as being a regional approach to rural economic development. It certainly was. We were quite focused on the economic piece of the program, and how to get trail users into the communities and spending money. That's a lot of what we were thinking about, and that's what the communities were thinking about. That's what the businesses were thinking about, and this gives you an idea of what that economic impact looked like. Whenever Linda Box, who was the person who first came up with this idea for the program, what happened, and I talk about all of this in my book, was she saw that first figure, the 2002 study that showed $7.2 million direct annual benefit, and she was disappointed in that. She knew that for such a long trail that the benefit should and could be greater than that amount. And so we did, in fact, see increased economic benefit over the years. And, it's hard to tell the whole story of why that economic growth took place, but, just a few things to give you a flavor for it. Between 2002 and 2008, there was more trail built. There were some critical trail connections that were completed. Our program was started. We started working directly with small businesses. By 2012, you can see that there was even greater economic impact. And the Conservancy, over the course of the last year, has been working to measure the impact again, and we will soon know what the impact is now, nearly a decade later. But these numbers should give you a feel for what was happening. But to me, the Trail Town story becomes a lot more interesting whenever trail and community advocates in other places, took the idea and adapted it. So these are just some of the marks for some of the programs throughout the United States. And the one in the upper left is the one that I was a part of and helped to implement. But the story of trail towns is really about adapting and improving and making the model appropriate to your own local capacity and needs and culture. So you can see here what I'm trying to demonstrate is that we started our program in 2007. The next one to be established was the Appalachian Trail Community Program. And so if you know anything about the Appalachian Trail, it's a 2,200-mile footpath. So they took something that was designed for a 150-mile rail trail and adapted it to make it work for a 2,200-mile trail across more than a dozen states. And then after that, some of the national scenic trails started to take notice to this idea for trail towns. The North Country Trail was the next one in 2007. The Arizona Trail, the C&O Canal, which is that connecting trail to the Gap. So that made it nice to have communities across that entire 300+ mile corridor paying attention to trails. And then Kentucky, the state of Kentucky comes along in 2012, and they say, okay, we like this idea and we're going to take it statewide. So they were the first state to establish a trail town program that was run out of a state agency. And so instead of having a program connected to a particular trail, they now are allowing towns all across the state to seek designation and be considered a trail town. The Continental Divide Trail Gateway Community Program was one of the next ones in 2014. So this is what it looks like now. This is a map that I created that hopefully is already out of date. I just created it middle of last year, but my hope is that trail towns continue to be added in different areas. If any state as well as the province of Ontario that is shaded dark green is a place in which there is some kind of a trail town presence, to my knowledge. There are, to my knowledge, about 20 trail town initiatives throughout the United States. They are all operated by different entities, and this is an important point. There's no universal place to go for approval or to tap into this model. It's just you take the idea and you apply it locally or regionally or statewide. And therefore what it looks like to be a trail town in Pennsylvania is different than what it would look like to be a trail town in Utah or Alaska or Idaho. There's just there are variations in how the programs are operated across the various states. And there are two basic models in my view. There's the trail specific model, like what we created along the Gap, where towns along that trail are connecting to the trail and to each other. And, that's what most of the programs are. But there also is a state model like the one I just described in Kentucky. The other states that now have statewide programs are Florida and Michigan. So here's the thing. I have been doing this work for a long time. I had my years at the Trailtown program, and then I established my practice and talked to a lot of people in different places about trail towns. And the thing that tends to bring people to trail towns is, an interest in the economic piece and, improving their community and recognizing, trails as assets that can help them to make their communities better. And I completely understand that. But something that I've noticed over the years is a little bit of an imbalance. There was, in my view, an overemphasis on the economic benefit. Not that that's not important. That's it's vital, and it's usually the hook that gets our decision makers to say yes to something like this. But there was an imbalance, and my work, since noticing that, has been driven by this Aldo Leopold quote, which is that a system of conservation based solely on economic self-interest is hopelessly lopsided. To me, what it meant to be a trail town in 2007, when I first started this work, was to be like, I was at the top of this pyramid. It's a community along a trail that in some way embraces the trail and is like benefiting from the trail economically speaking. But at this point, I really am near the bottom of the pyramid. I think that, what it really means to be a trail town is that the trail has become an integral part of the community's identity. There's been, a decision to embrace and invest in the trail. And it's not just for business transactions. It's not just for economic impact. It's for the greater good of the community. Another way of putting it is that it's a decision to pay attention to trails, which is why I named my book Deciding on Trails. I believe that every community faces the opportunity, faces this decision whether or not to invest in their trails and to celebrate them. This bridge, I want to note, is the High Trestle Trail Bridge in Iowa. This is a trail that's, I think, 24 miles long. It goes, it spans the Des Moines River Valley, and the bridge is outstanding. They could have put any bridge here, but the trail folks and the community decided to do a bridge that became a work of art. You can see these arches that span the bridge, go the duration of the bridge. And it's just so cool. It's a piece of art. They light the bridge at night. So it's an experience that is extended into the evening hours. And if you're looking at the photo on the right, you can see that the town of Madrid, Iowa, which is the closest town, that they decided to mimic those bridge arches in their wayfinding signs. So clever, so simple, but it sends a message that they, as they are inviting people off of the trail into the town, that they also are honoring the trail and the bridge. So as for deciding on trails, that's the name of the book. It's available in paperback and Kindle as well. And I'm offering a discount today. It's a 15% discount, which will actually be good through May 16th. And there's a coupon code there at the bottom of the screen. And I'll try to remember to put that in the chat later as well for you. But before I go any further into the book and some of the best practices that I recommend in the book, I wanted to just pause and ask Patrick if there are any questions or comments in the chat that I can react to, in terms of the history of trail towns.
Yeah, this is Tara. I've got one. We've got one from Kayla. Could you talk a little bit more about the community assessments? What should we be looking for in our cities and towns?
Yeah. So this assessment has been adapted by other programs and other places and updated, but the kinds of things that we were looking at were first impressions. If you came into the town for the first time from the trail, well, first of all, that we were looking at connectivity. How easy is it to get between trail and town? Is the route safe, and is it inviting? Is there good information at the trailhead telling people if they make the decision to walk or to bike in the town that they're going to find the services that they're looking for? And then when you get into town, like what are those first impressions? You know, how do the storefronts look? How are the sidewalks? You know, is it a town that is the kind of place that you want to spend some time? You know, really, and we also were looking at things like business hours and types of businesses. You know, what kinds of products and services are there? Could you get an inner tube for your bike? You know, can you get a dinner if you come off the trail late? You know, if you come off the trail at 8 p.m., are there places still open? So we were looking at all kinds of different things, ranging from you know, the physical infrastructure of the community to hospitality, really.
That's great. One other, it was a comment about how the bridge is fantastic. Love the public art aspect. Is there any other public art that you've seen out there that has been really inspiring?
Good question. There's great public art in so many places. I'm going to show you a sculpture in the town of Frostburg, Maryland in a few minutes. So I'll make sure to slow down and talk to you about that.
Okay.
And also for anyone that's listening, if you are aware of great examples of public art, please put that in the chat so that you can share with each other.
Okay. Another couple questions. Does the trail have to connect to the town, or can it just be nearby?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and allows me an opportunity to point out a difference between Eastern and Eastern and Western United States. You know, whenever I'm talking about the towns along the Great Allegheny Passage connecting to the trail, you know, it's a matter of towns that are maybe a mile or a half or a quarter of a mile from the trail, of helping them to safely, you know, lure people from the trail into the town. But if you were on the Arizona Trail or on the Continental Divide Trail, the nearest trail town, which, you know, on the Continental Divide Trail they call gateway communities, might be 15 miles, you know, from the trail in certain places, or 20 miles. So that's a long way of saying no. There doesn't need to be a physical connection. I think whenever a trail comes right through a community or skirts the edge of town, that's I call that you know, Willy Wonka's golden ticket. It's, you know, that's like when a community hits the jackpot, when the trail comes that close to the town. But a lot of the time they're just not quite that close. And you know, the ways of trying to accommodate trail users and draw them into the community, you know, the tactics have to change.
Great. One other question is about getting enough funds for building these types of trails. What kinds of things have you seen out there that have really been able to make it possible to make this kind of an investment?
Yeah. So just to be clear, like my work typically is after the trail has been done. You know, the Great Allegheny Passage, for example, was mostly built whenever we created the Trail Town program. You know, and whenever I consult clients, you know, about trail towns, a lot of the time there is a trail already in place. And, you know, we're just working on the topic of how communities can better connect to it. So I don't know that I have a great answer around the funding of trails. I know I live in a great trail state where we have, you know, good funding from our state DNR, but that varies from state to state. Tara, is there anything that you
Yeah.
would want to say about that?
Yeah, actually, I
Mhm.
have done presentation at a national conference about the ways that people have come up with funding trails. Outside of things like the lottery in Colorado or oil and gas revenues sometimes like have been done in Pennsylvania. There's been transfer taxes that have brought in tens of millions of dollars. That's real estate transfer taxes. Here in Utah, we have a third of a cent on the transient room tax. That's a third of a cent on a dollar. And there have been other ways I could do another presentation on that, but it has been a matter of trying to capture some type of small amount of money, whether even sporting goods sales tax in Texas. That kind of goes in to help pay for these things. So there are a number of options.
Yeah, great. And one thing that I can speak to is the funding of Trail Town programs. Like I said, there are, probably about 20 Trail Town programs throughout the United States. They've all been funded differently. The one that we did probably had a budget. It's been a long time since I've been there, but the budget was probably a few $100,000 annually to operate the program. And we had a lot of private foundation support because that's just a part of our in Western Pennsylvania, we have foundations that are here and that are supportive of the nonprofit community. But some of the other programs along other trails are, operated on a shoestring budget. And, so the budgets for operating these can really vary. And, the one thing that I would want you to remember today is that you can create a program for your trail that communities can all come together and become designated. You can operate a formal program, but if you don't operate a formal program, any steps that you take to help your town to become more trail friendly and to cultivate a trail culture are positive steps that you're taking. You don't necessarily have to have a full budget and a formal program to become a more trail friendly community. Really, to me, being a trail town, besides the formality of it, it's an attitude. So with that, we probably should go into the next section. So the book covers the history that I just shared with you in detail, but I also talk about best practices for healthy trail towns. And these are the 7 best practices. I'm going to walk you through them, so no need for me to run down the list here. So one of them is to adopt a shared vision. You have to, as a community, have a vision for how you will better connect to your trail or trails, how you will invest in your trails, and this is an important conversation to have because trails are really powerful tools, economically speaking, and in their potential to improve lives. But we also want to be careful to avoid some of the pitfalls around over tourism and displacement and some of the issues that I know that a lot of communities face. So I think getting together and having a shared vision that's agreed upon really is an important step. Committing to quality trails is you would think that would just be taken just a given, but I want to stress that the quality of your trail does matter. I mentioned before that there are more than 2,000 rail trails in the United States. It's a competitive marketplace. People have all sorts of trails from which to choose, and the ones that are of high quality are the ones where people will go. And so quality trails matter. And in terms of quality trails, I consider a part of trail quality to be destination appeal. And I just wanted to talk for a few minutes about this. This is in Salmon, Idaho, by the way. This is one of the gateway communities that is participating in the Continental Divide Trail program. And like this, it's wow factor, right? The destination appeal cannot be underestimated. It might be a natural feature, like what you're seeing here, or oh, hey, another natural feature. So this is me 20 years ago at the Delicate Arch, and I dug these photos out this morning as I was preparing, and it was one of those moments in life where you wonder how 20 years have passed by so quickly. I just look like a baby here. I'm 23 years old in this picture, and this trail and this experience for me left a lasting impression. I'm talking about destination and wow factor, and in the book, I actually made reference to this trail experience, and I talk about I talk about indelible moments, and these are moments that leave a lasting mark or a lasting impression. And I don't remember much about my time at Arches, but what I do remember is turning that bend, and before I saw the arch, I saw the people who were gathered admiring it. And I remember seeing something special in the people who were there that day. It was like I was seeing the best in people in that moment, because we all were in this shared state of awe. And I have no idea how I have a picture without a bunch of people down around the arch, but somehow I do. And that moment, though, was special enough that somehow it popped into my head 19 years later as I'm writing this book, and I decided to include it. So again, we're talking about quality trails. We're talking about destination appeal. Here we are back at the High Trestle Trail Bridge. So sometimes the wow factor is already there, and sometimes we build it. The third practice of healthy trail communities is to physically connect trail to town. And this is one that people want to talk about most often. It's just what are the things that we can do? What are the things that we can build to better connect? It might be connector trails or bike lanes or public art, the things that help to draw people from here to there. And speaking of art, this is the sculpture that I mentioned just a few minutes ago. This is in Frostburg, Maryland, on the Great Allegheny Passage. And Frostburg really has its work cut out for it. The town, the business district, is about a mile up the mountain from the trail itself. And so, remember, this is a rail trail. So a lot of people are on rail trails because they're nice and level. But for them to decide to go in the Frostburg, there's a decision to be made. Is it worth it in terms of going up over this hill? And I think that these sculptures, there's this one and there's one that's similar to it, do some of the convincing, right? So what they did in Frostburg was they built these switchbacks to make it easier to get up toward town, and they placed the sculptures along the switchbacks, along with interpretive panels and banners that are kind of pulling people, up closer to town. But I just love these sculptures. They're really fantastic and obviously tie into the trail. Another thing I want to say about physically connecting trail to town is that, for years and years and years, like I've been thinking about how to draw trail users into town. It's just as important or more to think about how do we draw our townspeople out to our trails, and make sure that whenever we are trying to connect, that we're making we're taking care to build those connections for local residents as well. Sometimes the connections are you know, more like these are bike racks here. This is a physical infrastructure that is also sending a message about how the community, you know, thinks about its trail. And that one sort of like bleeds into the next practice, which is extending an invitation. So we're getting now into the realm of hospitality, but some of this is physical still. Like, I think that whenever you're at a trailhead and you see a welcome sign, or you see a wayfinding sign, or directions into the community, that, you know, this is your first sign of welcome. And so it's physical, but it's also it's an invitation. And the invitation need not be expensive all of the time. This is just a little yard sign that probably costs $30 or $25, that, you know, this business decided to put up next to their permanent sign to tell trail users that they are welcome to their business. And again, going back to what I said before about extending the invitation, I'd bet a lot of money that this kid is local to this community, you know, and what are we doing to think about our local residents and making sure that they feel welcome to trails? A lot of people don't need an invitation to trails. They just find their nearest trailhead and they go enjoy the trail. But a lot of other people need to be welcomed to trails, and we need to make that invitation appealing. So let's chat. I'm not going to be able to see the chat, but if you feel so inclined, go ahead and take a minute just to invite people. You can invite me, or you can invite everyone else who's on this webinar to your trail community. Let them know why you would want them to come and visit your town. In the interest of time, I'm not going to wait for you to do that. I'm going to share the next practice, which is to know your market. This, of course, is easier said than done. I think it can be really challenging for communities and for, you know, small trail groups to really understand who's using their trail, and who might be. I think if you're able to do economic research, if you're able to do trail counts, if you're able to go out and talk to people on the trail, if you're able to collect their zip codes, these are the kinds of things that we need to do to arm ourselves with information about who's using our trails. And, you know, the unstated part of this practice is know your market and accommodate them, like this bike shop or restaurant in Illinois. You know, they have bikes and wheels all over the walls and ceilings, or, you know, pottery. You know, this, like, you know, that's kind of business that really doesn't have much of a way to connect with a trail unless they decide to do a mug like this. This is a label from a beer that was brewed in Dayton, Ohio, and it was a trail town beer. So the brewery decided that they were going to brew a beer in honor of the trail town, donate a portion of the proceeds. That happens all the time, I'm sure you know, with trails. And then they had, you know, local artists compete to create the label. This is a business owner that, you know, knows its market. Segmenting cyclists. Again, a lot of you are probably not thinking about bike trails, but, you know, I go into this a little bit in the book anyway, and just wanted to share this example that, you know, for biking anyway, there are people who are, you know, everywhere on the spectrum, from shoestring to comfort cyclist. And I included this photo that I did because this is a group of comfort cyclists. We biked very few miles over a 2-day trip. The trip wasn't really about the trail, but we were using the trail to get to our guest house where we had a retreat experience. And, you know, like, this was a group that was willing to pay for that experience. Not every trail user or group is interested in that kind of experience. So we have to know there's variation. I love this photo, and I think I was just looking for an excuse to use it. But this is near the Continental Divide Trail, and this Clancy, who I know, you know, has goats, and it reminded me of this goat experience that I had in Ontario near a trail. And this business that's offering this goat experience is just doing bang up business. And they have figured out how to provide an interactive experience to people. And I often think we're not in the business of trails, and we're not in the business of tourism. We're in the business of providing experiences. So, what are the things out on our trails that we can do to create experiences? Which brings me to this series of questions, in terms of knowing your market. I'm just going to rattle them off. What do trail users need? What do they want? What do they not know that they want? How do they make their travel decisions? How are the business hours in your town? How might trail users enjoy your neighboring community? When we talk about trail towns, that model is very much rooted in the idea that it's communities along a single trail working together. So, what are you doing to refer your customers to the next community over to enhance their trail experience? How can their trail experience be elevated? Going back to the goats as an example, and what tugs at their heartstrings. So I'm not a professional marketer, but it's really important that you do know your market. It's also important that you share your story as a community and as a trail. Storytelling is really important. Like I said, it's a competitive marketplace out there with trails and the outdoor economy. So we have to help people to understand what's special about our places and about our trails. This is in Fort Wayne, Indiana, where the buffalo once roamed and no longer do, and those are carrier pigeons there. So sometimes storytelling has to do with our past, as well as where we are heading. This wall is located along the Great Allegheny Passage, and is this mosaicist. She created she took a former coal mine where her father and grandfather worked, and now it has become a canvas for mosaic art. So talk about what a great story. Right along the trail, it's a stone's throw from the trail, and it's telling the story of nature taking over. It's telling a story of new ways of creating livelihood. And here's another one. This is in Ashtabula, Ohio. This is a lift bridge that's in their community, and you can see in their bike rack that lift bridge is honored. So there are all sorts of ways to tell stories, and this takes me to the last practice, which is cultivating a trail culture. It's just cultivating a trail culture is the thing that we do to celebrate our trails just for their sake of existing, and the way that they improve our life quality as residents. And like I said, the benefit that comes out of that, one of the benefits that comes out of that is a lasting and sustainable trail economy. Like if you as a visitor go into a community and you see that this is a place that has like something special about it, it feels vibrant, you can tell that the people and businesses celebrate the trail and celebrate the outdoors. It's the kind of place that you as a visitor are going to want to recommend and come back to. And sometimes people do ask me, how do you know if you've achieved a trail culture? And to me, I always think of this yarn bike, which is in the window of a local yarn shop in Franklin, Pennsylvania. And I happened upon this storefront, and there's no reason this yarn shop needed to create this window display, but she did. And there's a sign pointing to the bike trail, and wow, that to me is trail culture. Whenever a business that stands little to benefit from doing something like this does it anyway, there's something that's happening that's celebrating trails. And so what I've just presented to you with these 7 practices is a series of seemingly unnecessary practices that together improve quality of life, bring delight, and are indicative of culture. So I hope that you'll be able to spend some more time with those practices if you win the book today or if you pick it up. And I just want to take a few moments to say, I'm working on a project this year that's allowing me to roll my sleeves up and to practice what I've been preaching. So I'm working in the community of Connellsville along the Great Allegheny Passage, and they've asked me to come in and to help them with their placemaking efforts and to work with them to really activate their town and to help their town better connect to the trail. And this is one of those towns where the trail comes right through town. So they're really lucky that the trail is coming right through. You get to the near the town and you see this great arch with the Allegheny Mountains in front of you. You go a little bit further and you see this cool sculpture. This is called From Coke to Spokes because these were the bottom portion represents old coke ovens that were part of the process in making steel. And then the spokes, of course, represent, where the community is headed today. But you get into town, you see the sculpture, you see businesses that are really close to the trail and, signs that are telling you how to get into town, how to get to services. The businesses are doing a great job of serving trail users. You can't see it, but, there are bike racks here and there are benches and, outdoor seating and, they're doing all of the right things. This is another example of a business doing the right things and just, creating and inviting celebratory kind of environment. But there's just something that's not clicking in Connellsville, and that's what we're working on together this year is some of those placemaking strategies. This is a map that shows the zip codes of people that are visiting one of their town museums in the off season, and this is what the map looks like during trail season. So there's a lot of potential, but they're just not quite taking full advantage. And so that's what I'm working with them on, working on building up a culture and an economy that will better connect to the trail. I'm not going to go into this next slide, but we're working on reaching out to local residents as well as reaching out to trail users. Our campaign is two-pronged, trying to reach both audiences because it's important that we reach the local audience as well. So I'm going to stop there. I know we have only about 5 minutes and I want to be able to answer some questions.
Well, thanks. Does anyone have any additional questions? I see a lot of them were responding to you, Amy, and inviting people to visit their communities, ranging from those who are along the Great Allegheny Passageway to Midway, Utah, Parowan, Utah, Wisconsin, another one from Allegheny County. Yeah, and what was it? There's just some, I think this was fairly well answered already, but just how do you approach a community to promote interest in trail development? But
how do you
yeah, I guess they're coming from the point of view of they've got to get something going,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I mean, I assume you have some outdoor resources, around your community, whether the trail is complete or not. But I think you have to be able to demonstrate early success. I'm blanking on, the Project for Public Spaces is really into what they call like lighter, quicker, cheaper projects. It's tactical urbanism, and the idea is to get some things done, get some people together that feel passionate about this, make some progress, show some physical improvements. They don't have to cost a lot. Also, I think collect the stories. If you do have people already visiting and enjoying your trails, you have to have local business owners and others that are sharing some of those success stories. You have to. I think sometimes it's a matter of reminding people of what that you do have something special here, and people just need to be reminded sometimes.
Thanks. One other was looking for examples of heritage trails, and Jen, I don't know exactly if you're referring to kind of the type of trails that we've had here that are kind of historic trails. We've got the old Spanish Trail. We've got the Mormon Pioneer Trail. There's towards the northwest, the Oregon Pioneer Trail, and things such as that. But what have you seen out there?
Yeah, well, there are a lot of heritage trails. I would look at the Partnership for National Trail System to see some of the ones that are recognized nationally. Some of the United States heritage trails. I think I'm getting that wording just wrong. But this does give me the opportunity to say a lot of Trail Town initiatives are located along physical trails, but I think the concept could also work along, heritage routes. And I haven't seen a lot of that done yet. One I would look into is in Alaska. I forget the name of the program, but I can put it in the chat at the end. But it's a national heritage area that is also doing trail towns.
Okay, great. Just going to ask Patrick if he's got some winners. And one more, Jake Powell, do you have some recommendations for communities that only have local trails that are not long or regional? In other words, a few out and back hiking trails on public lands that are not directly connected to the community.
Yeah, I'm glad you asked, Jake. And I think it's important that we don't just think of the long distance destination trails as being places where you can have trail towns. It's natural that those trails would have trail town initiatives, but again, to me, trails exist for local residents, local people. And some of the best trail town initiatives, I think, are really celebrating and investing in trails for the benefit that they bring to local people and the way that they improve lives. So some of the trails, I'm not aware of many short distance trails that have a trail town program, but I do have a document that I can share out that is basically sharing some best, some of the most impressive trails that are shorter in distance. So I'll work with you, Tara, to figure out how to share that. And again, a lot of these, almost everything that I shared today, are things that do stand to benefit trail users and trail visitors, but also make life better for local residents. So I would just say, if you have short local community trails, keep investing in them and keep finding ways to help your residents to connect to them.
Thanks. And just a last comment, Angelo points out we have the Golden Spoke. It's a 100-mile trail route from Ogden to Provo. Good starting point. It's all paved. So, and I know we're going to continue to add to that. All right, Patrick, do we have some folks who are that you can draw at random from those who have made comments or done
we do.
Questions?
Yeah. So people who either promoted their trail town or made a question. I went ahead. I just did the drawing. I believe these 4 are still online. So anybody whose name I call, please stay on for a moment so we can get your information to get you your book. I'll also put my email into the chat so you can reach out to me if you do lose it. So those winners are, we have Doug Regner.
Mm-hmm.
There's that one. We also have Ben Muhlstein. We've got a Blaine Fackrell. And last but not least, we have Molly Halterman. So I'm putting my email in chat right now. You can send me your information there. Or if you want to just stay on for a moment, once we're done, we'll get your information and get your book out.
Congratulations, and thanks everyone for joining us. We will be sending out, if Amy, if you had anything to share, that would be great, and we can send out a link for this webinar. Please share it, and also the great promo code. So if you weren't a winner, you can still get her great book, which obviously at, let's see, I'm going to go before we get to the suggested resources. It's almost 200 pages. You'll get a lot more than what she's been able to present in this 1-hour segment. But thank you so much, everyone.
And if I could
Uh,
just say one last thing, it looks like Doug already has the book. So I pulled one more name. Ashley Workman. If you're on, you just won a book. So please hang with me.
I see Doug reacting. I put the link in the chat to those 5 iconic trails under 50 miles, and I also put the promo code, discount code in there as well. Thank you all so much. Good luck in your efforts.